The 1950s is a still very recent period of history that I think gets an unfairly good rap. People think of it as this happy, idyllic time. It was the age of innocence. It was the age of values. It was the age of I Love Lucy and Leave It to Beaver. Bullshit. It was the age of McCarthyism. It was the age of the Red Scare. It was the age of Jim Crow. The first rumblings about civil rights, women's rights, and many other issues were just starting to be felt. And those idyllic looking, model homes on tree-lined streets may as well have been jail cells. Guess what? There was wife swapping going on. There was drugs going on. There was domestic abuse going on. So many issues and problems and perversions that we are perfectly common about today, they existed then. They just weren't spoken about openly. So that's why I think people really need to take the rose-tinted glasses off. And that's something that is actually captured very well in the Amazon Prime series Them, which just recently dropped on Prime. For the most part, I actually did like this show, but I'm perfectly willing to acknowledge and discuss its flaws, and there are flaws aplenty. When I first saw some advertising for it, I actually thought it was going to be a Jordan Peele production, a follow-up to his movie Us. And it actually has a very similar vibe, but no, this is not a Peele production, though it does seem to borrow elements of his work. The plot concerns a young African-American family who relocates to an affluent suburb in Compton, California, trying to start a new life and live the American dream. The model home, the car, the TV dinners. But suffice to say, they immediately run into bigotry from their neighbors, particularly a Karen who becomes one of our primary antagonists. And it's also hinted progressively that bubbling beneath the surface is some past trauma that they have not completely made peace with, and that slowly begins to interfere in their daily lives. And they also progressively begin to drop hints that maybe there's something else at play as well. I would compare it very much to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining or to The Lighthouse, in that for at least the first few episodes you're left questioning, are there supernatural events at work here, or is this family simply cracking under the strain? Are they coming apart mentally? Now, I'm going to warn you, and I'm not going to spoil this too much with details, but I will say, when we do get our conclusive answer to that question, it's a really, really bad answer. They really jump into M. Night Shyamalan territory with a completely unnecessary, convoluted, and confusing twist ending that just leaves you feeling unsatisfied. Particularly since we don't get to see the bad guys get their comeuppance. To borrow some pro wrestling parlance here, the heels don't get their comeuppance. Particularly the Karen, who becomes an increasingly shrill and annoying figure, and less menacing and more just someone you kind of want to slap across the chops and get her out of the way and get to the real meat and bones. I would have to say the acting here is strong, but much like with 2013 Ghostbusters, when you only got so much to work with, there's not a lot you can do. Now, I also, in some reviews, have seen this show described as degradation porn. And for the most part, I got to agree with that assessment. It works for the first, I would say, 3-4 episodes, just to give you an idea of what these characters are up against, what kind of strains and pressures they're facing, and the toll it's taking on them. But eventually, it just gets tedious. You can only see them getting subjected to this for that many episodes before it gets to feel boring, and you really want to move on with the plot. And at times, it is a little unnervingly vicious. It's not very often that a horror movie or a horror show will make me feel actually a little bit genuinely uncomfortable, like, why are they doing this on camera? But this one definitely slips into that territory on a few occasions. Not that that's a completely bad thing. You almost admire them for having the guts to go there, but you really only needed to go there once in a miniseries. You didn't need to keep doing it over and over. I'm also going to say I've got a problem with the antagonists we get in this. Personally, and once you've seen it, you'll know what I'm referring to here, I think the tap dancing man should have been the primary antagonist instead of being demoted to a third string antagonist by the end. The character is gruesome, and is definitely played well by a very charismatic actor. And it fits well for, what you would imagine an African-American family at that time period having to go through, the kind of stereotypes that they're living under, the expectations being put on them, and maybe the temptation to cave in, to lash out, to be angry, to let that anger consume you. But instead, the character is more like an annoying distraction, which was just a waste of a potentially great horror bad guy. My overall assessment of them, I would have to rate it probably a solid 3 out of 5 stars. It's effective and it's good. Their use of lighting and sound really is very strong. The jump scares get a little repetitive though. But they could easily have removed several characters and squashed this down and cut out probably, I'd say, 2 episodes, making it 8 instead of 10. And it wouldn't have harmed the end result very much at all, and probably made it a little more satisfying as a viewing experience. I want to thank you all for having toughed it out with me. I know I've been neglecting my videos lately. Depression gets to you, and the lethargy it causes is hard to break out of, but I'm doing my best. I want to thank the House That Screams podcast for recently having me back on after a short absence. We had a great discussion about The Shining. I'm looking forward to when that episode drops. Keep your eyes out for it. I got more stuff coming up. Horror Hot Ones will be getting revived soon for the summer season. Look out for that with some interesting new selections. And I'm going to be continuing food and drink reviews and movie and TV reviews. Thank you for joining me, folks. As always, take your precautions, wash your hands, wear your mask, look out for each other, eat, drink, and be scary. I'll see you next time.